Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining my channel today. I hope everyone is having a good week. So today I'm going to be reading the chart of Kouri Richins, and her trial is being held next month because she is being charged with murder in the death of her husband. Prosecutors are arguing that she killed her husband by slipping fentanyl into a Moscow Mule, an alcoholic beverage that she prepared for him. She also apparently committed mortgage fraud in 2021, and a possible motive for her killing her husband was for financial gain, and that she was planning her future with another man. So, one of the more bizarre aspects about this case is that she wrote a children's book about grief after her husband's death, and she and her husband had two boys together. Kouri was raised in the Mormon faith. She was a real estate agent, and she also told police that she found out that her husband had been having an affair before his alleged murder. So that's the backstory to the case, and I'm going to take you through a deep dive of this chart, the aspects that her planets are making, the planets in their signs and what they mean, and really some of the clues as to what kind of a person she is, what her pitfalls are, what her challenges are, so on and so forth. So I've already outlined in dark blue, hopefully you guys can see it, that she does have a kite pattern in her chart. So I'm going to go over that and explain what that means. So a kite involves a grand trine, and her grand trine involves Chiron in Cancer, Pluto in Scorpio, and Venus in Pisces. And so that's this kind of triangle formation that you see here spread across the chart. Now, traditionally, Chiron is not always included in a grand trine because it's not a planet, but I think it's something we have to consider here. And personally, I believe this could account for a lot of what's going on with her, what we've seen from her. And so she has this grand trine in water, which could become particularly overwhelming because it's all this watery, emotional energy. And I will say that even though a grand trine is supposed to be positive, so it's supposed to bring luck and fortune, you really need to know how to use the energy the right way. So I've met people whose charts are filled with trines, grand trines, but they struggle in life because they haven't learned to use the energy in the way the chart wants them to use it. They're used to things coming very easily to them, and so they may tend to not feel like they have to fight to get what they want. So for Kouri, what this grand trine is trying to do is to have her use her relationships, love relationships in particular, to actually activate these deep personal wounds in Cancer. So it's related to her childhood or past lives around Cancer themes, you know, feeling unloved, feeling abandoned potentially, being mothered. And so then she is meant to heal these wounds through love and through her relationships. So this may cause her to attract partners who are quite wounded themselves. And this would cause her to really go through a lot of intense emotional upheaval at first. But the purpose of this grand trine is to ultimately bring her opportunities to really transform herself and to heal herself. Now, the kite pattern comes in because Neptune is making an opposition to Chiron. And then Venus, as well as Pluto, they're both making a sextile to Neptune. So the opposition from Chiron to Neptune is the tail of the kite. So the energy of this grand trine is going to get channeled through this opposition or this tail. And the opposition between Chiron and Neptune shows wounding, again, like I said, around feeling unloved or abandoned. And then this Neptune in Capricorn that's on the opposite end of the spectrum. This represents ideals about responsibility, achieving things, being strong, and really kind of finding ways to hold it together. I also noticed that she has Saturn in its rulership of Capricorn, and it's one of the final dispositors in her chart. So this lends another clue to us that this is someone who feels she has to uphold a sense of responsibility, of decorum, and that she really tries to keep up appearances. So I want to go back to this book that she wrote. And I haven't read the book, but the little research I've done on it, I know that the book is called Are You With Me? And it's about a fictional character, this child who has lost his father. And then it's about the child learning that the father is an angel whose presence and love is surrounding the child. So to me, that kind of screams Moon in Pisces. I don't know about any of you. I don't know if her moon is in fact in Pisces because if she was born before 12 o'clock, it would have been in Aquarius. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you think her moon is in Pisces or Aquarius. But getting back to the kite pattern. So she wrote this book, and I know the main theory floating out there is that she wrote the book to cover her tracks, to throw people off, and to make it look as though she had no involvement in the murder. So that may have been a part of it, but I have a different opinion when I look at her chart, and especially at this kite. And that's because with the opposition from Chiron to Neptune, what you're basically seeing is that she has this intense vulnerability around themes of home, family, and children. And because this is opposing Neptune in Capricorn, I also think she has a fear of emotionally falling apart. Now, the Neptune tells her that she has to appear responsible, she has to appear put together, she has to control the narrative, and she needs to build something. And because it's Chiron in Cancer, what this means or what this could show us is that her psyche is redirecting her attention to her children's pain and their sense of healing, not her own. So, astrologically, this kite does show us that she has a tendency to move quite quickly to meaning making and caretaking as a way to survive something that it can't consciously integrate. And Neptune opposing Chiron on its own has a way of leading us to project our pain onto others and to wind up ignoring our own feelings. Now, Pluto in Scorpio, it's really kind of a key player here because Pluto is about the truth. It's about what lies underneath. And if it's not well integrated here, it's going to go underground and it's going to exert pressure through control and secrecy. It also doesn't help that Mercury is making an opposition to this Pluto because this aspect is going to interact with the kite and it's going to help her to really analyze something to death, obsess about it. It can transform what happened until the story can become something, that's digestible for others. And Mercury is also making a trine to this Neptune, which is really, really good at translating thoughts into narratives, metaphors, or stories. And it is basically helping her to make meaning out of what's happened that feels unbearable or that she herself cannot live with. I will say too, it'll be interesting to see if her husband's supposed affair comes up in the trial because someone with Mercury opposing Pluto can really dig and dig to the point that they start to become suspicious and paranoid. So with her, and again with the Mercury making a trine to Neptune, I could see her really getting obsessive about the fact that her husband had this affair or she thought that he did. And she really digs and does a lot of research and then almost could like totally conjure up a story of what happened in her mind, um, which of course would then go back to this Chiron, right? If she believes her husband had an affair, it would trigger, these old wounds of her family turning against her, of feeling betrayed, by family in the home, feeling unloved, so on and so forth. So I'm going to erase this because this is a lot. So What's making this even more complicated is that Chiron is conjunct Jupiter here, and Jupiter really can expand whatever it touches in a natal chart. And so what this means is that when she feels wounded or, experiences pain related to old wounds, her feelings are really going to become super intense. And this is all Cancer energy, so that's pretty emotional to begin with. So, like I was saying a minute ago, when she discovered her husband was cheating on her or he supposedly was having an affair, it would have triggered this Chiron in Cancer conjunct Jupiter in Cancer because it would have been yet another experience that would have left her feeling abandoned and unloved. Also, this Jupiter is it's very likely making a trine to her moon. And so this means that when she feels these old wounds get triggered, she not only very easily experiences intensity of emotions, um, the moon is also conjunct Mars. And so what that means is that she not only experiences intensity of emotions, she's going to then quickly feel as though she needs to do something about it and to do something about all that pain that's being dredged up. So again, this theory that she wanted to murder her husband for money, to start a new life with a new man, it could fit with what I've already described. She feels wounded by her current husband. She may go back to thinking about her kids, Chiron and Cancer, thinking, this isn't the right environment for them. Perhaps their father cheated on me. He's not a good man. I need more money in order to provide for them. And then she could have used Neptune as a way to fantasize a way that she could escape the situation in order to be strong for her children, in order to provide them with a better life. Now, her Mars is at 29 Aquarius. And so if you watched the video I did on Sean Combs, I talked about how he had a Mars at 29 Capricorn and how much that led to his success because he was someone who knew Capricorn extremely well. So in Kouri's case, it's the same deal. She knows the traits of Aquarius very well. So someone who acts according to their own rules, someone who wants to maintain a sense of freedom, independence, someone who could be more of a thinker, less of an emotionally attached person. So, assuming she does have Pisces conjunct this moon in Pisces, conjunct this Mars at 29 Aquarius, you would get a deeply emotional person that has a drive that acts detached and could do rebellious or bizarre things. Emotions are felt intensely, especially again with the trine to Jupiter conjunct Chiron. But these feelings may be expressed indirectly, and her emotional pain or anger may come out in shocking ways. And keep in mind that Jupiter is making, let me do that over. Um, Jupiter is making a trine to this Mars no matter what. So, no matter what time she was born, this would be making a trine. Um, And so this would increase her drive to get something done in order to deal with her emotions, being that it's conjunct her moon. The Mars in Aquarius means, to me, what it means is she's thinking about wanting to do something her way. She wants to deal with her feelings towards building her future in her own way. I know people are also looking at the Mars in Aquarius and thinking about her being aloof or emotionally detached. So I think what happens with her, because it's conjunct the moon, especially if it's in Pisces, she feels very deep wounding and emotions. And then she winds up quickly acting in a way that is all about principles, about ideas, about what makes sense to her in that moment. So the Aquarius, in effect, makes her kind of pull herself back a bit from the emotions. And she starts to think about ideas, what feels fair, what doesn't. So, in effect, her emotions wind up getting bypassed. She acts in this Aquarian way, and her feelings don't really get processed. Hopefully, I'm not going too fast. I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you guys, so let me know if this is too fast for you, if I needed to slow any of this down. So I next want to talk about her sun at 0 degrees of Taurus. And opposite of a planet being at 29 degrees, when a planet is at 0 degrees, it is just starting out in a new cycle of that sign. So there can still be a very clear expression of Taurus in this case, but she could be making mistakes related to Taurus themes. So I know that the theory floating around out there is that she murdered her husband for money because she was drowning in debt. And finances in particular is something that someone with a 0 degree planet in Taurus could really struggle with. So there may be mistakes made with finances, with spending. She could definitely be overspending her money, especially because of the fact that it's ruled by Venus in Pisces. So um, Pisces is a mutable sign, so it could really cause her to kind of turn the other direction very quickly towards wanting stability, predictability. She might want to gravitate more towards novelty, spending on a variety of things, which could lead to some spontaneous purchases or making some spontaneous decisions about her finances. Believe it or not, I'm going to predict that she feels very guilty and ashamed after she does this and after she acts in rash ways because her Saturn is in Capricorn and it is one of the final dispositors of her chart. So all the energy kind of leads back to the Saturn and then it has no place else to go because it's in its home sign. So also, Venus is in Pisces, and so the Pisces is ruled by Neptune in Saturn, and that is ruled by the, I'm sorry, Neptune in Capricorn, and that is ruled by Saturn in Capricorn. And so to me, this is a person who makes these kind of impulsive choices. And then she has this voice that comes in and kind of wags its finger at her, tells her that she should be ashamed of herself. Like I said, Saturn is one of the final dispositors here. So I do find her to be particularly self-critical, but really only after she has made certain decisions. So Saturn is really only making one major aspect in her chart, and that is that it's making a square to her sun. And so this also means she has really struggled with not feeling good enough in this lifetime. Since it's a square, she may also automatically assume that others see her as lacking something or that they also think she's not good enough. This is definitely an aspect that can improve over time and with hard work. I will say that if Kouri had Saturn making some positive aspects, so if she had Saturn making some trines or sextiles in this chart, I do think it would be easier for her to improve this square, but that's not happening in this chart. So she was obviously struggling in life to some extent. She was struggling with finances and debt. Apparently, her husband was cheating on her. So I assume she hardly felt like an authority figure at that point. And then interestingly, if we look at her planetary order, Saturn is one of the last planets that comes up for her in the line. Her sun, her moon, if this is the correct timing, would come first at 0 degrees 2 seconds, followed by Sun at 0 degrees 23 seconds. And then Saturn comes almost last since it's at 25, and it falls right behind Mars, which of course is the last planet in the order at 29 Aquarius. And so while Saturn here may make her feel badly about herself, it may tell her things about herself that are harsh or unpleasant. If we were to go by planetary order, the next planet in line is this Mars in Aquarius, which is going to resist this rigid structure of Saturn in Capricorn. So she feels bad about herself. She feels treated unfairly by her husband, but then she wants to shake things up and do things in a new way. She wants to do something her way. Now, if this moon really is at 0 degrees of Pisces, um, there's going to be very, very little space. Actually, even if this was a moon at 28, 27 degrees of Aquarius, there's going to be very, very little space between emotion and action for her. So this means that while she decides to take action, she could also be experiencing really very raw, intense emotion simultaneously. The last thing I'm going to talk about is that she has Pluto squaring her nodes. And again, I think we're really starting to see a pattern here of Pluto making some kind of a hard aspect to the nodes. I know we've done a couple of videos back to back where Saturn was conjunct, or I'm sorry, Pluto was conjunct the South Node. So Pluto making a square to the nodes means that she's essentially going to keep getting thrown off from her life path. Her life path is actually in Aquarius. And so, if you have your South Node in Leo and your North Node in Aquarius, please know this is actually one of the hardest life paths to be on. Moving towards a path where you're being asked to let go of your ego, your self-expression for a more collective humanitarian focus can be extremely hard to do or to even know where to start. So this is a difficult life path for her to be on to begin with. But ultimately, I do feel like if Kouri were to achieve this North Node, this is where she could gain a lot of the self-confidence that she is lacking. So this could really help her feel as though, she takes pride in her uniqueness, where she could ultimately become a leader of sorts in terms of helping others. But like I said earlier, for her, reaching this path is made even more difficult by the fact that Pluto is making a square to it. So it means she's going to have difficulty moving forward due to power struggles and control issues related to past circumstances. In other words, she is going to keep being pulled back towards situations where she has to grapple with having control. And this could be a karmic issue of sorts, where she and her husband were perhaps playing something out in this lifetime that was left over from the lifetime before, and they were locked in some kind of power struggle with one another. One of the things I didn't really even touch on is the religious component. So I bring that up because I know she grew up in a Mormon family, and I believe she and her husband were of the Mormon faith. So this North Node in Aquarius, it makes someone kind of feel like they need at some point in their life, or it should, to make someone feel as though they need to embrace what's different about them, what sets them apart, what makes them unique. Now, she has the Saturn's making the square to her sun. She has that Chiron in Cancer conjunct Jupiter. So if I were meeting her and sitting down with her, I would really get curious about um, how she felt during her childhood. Did she feel different? Did she feel different from her peers or her siblings? Did she feel like she couldn't live up somehow to the religious standards? Did she get a lot of criticism for being different or for having different beliefs? Um, because ultimately she is supposed to again be on this life path towards being unique, really embracing what makes her her and having more autonomy and freedom. But of course, Pluto squaring this, Pluto being involved in this kite, that's really going to be a challenge for her in terms of achieving this life path. So let me know what you guys think about my reading of her chart. Let me know what you think about her moon. Do you think it's in Pisces? Do you think it's in Aquarius? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And if there's anyone in true crime in the media whose chart you want me to go over, let me know. I really want to deliver what you guys want. So if there's anyone who you want me to go over, please let me know. They would have to be in true crime and in the media. Um, and so I think that Kouri Richins' trial is starting February 6th, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's going to be very interesting. It'll be interesting to see what comes up based on what I've talked about in that trial. So let me know what you guys think and stay tuned for my next video. Thank you so much for watching.